Hi, welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. App Store optimization is often treated as a checklist item. Update keywords, run a few tests, maybe later on some paid traffic. But when those pieces operate in isolation, teams miss the real opportunity, using paid and organic together as a single feedback-driven system. In this episode, we're sharing an App Talks interview with David Quinn, VP of Strategy and Partnerships at Gummicube. David reframes ASO not as a standalone discipline, but as a full funnel acquisition and conversion engine. One where keyword strategy, creative testing, and paid campaigns continuously inform one another. Without further ado, here's a conversation with David Quinn, VP of Strategy and Partnerships at Gummicube.
Hi, I'm David Murphy at Business of Apps, and I'm talking today with David Quinn, who is VP Strategy and Partnerships at Gummicube. David, good day to you, sir. How are you doing?
Doing well. How about you, David?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. So we're going to talk today about App Store optimization, ASO, in particular boosting that with paid campaigns. I know lots of people have different sort of ideas of what ASO actually is, so maybe we could start with your take on it, your definition of it.
Yeah, so when we think about ASO at Gummicube, it's different because a lot of people think it's just doing keyword updates or running A/B tests, and then worst of all, running paid campaigns to boost downloads, which is not ASO. All of those things are ASO when you combine them and the learnings from them. When we think of ASO, it's more about the top funnel user acquisition and conversion from the store. There's your organic channels, and that's where the keyword updates come in to get found on more terms, A/B testing to convert on more terms, and then the paid campaigns to help with your ASO on the organic side. But it's not any one of those things in a vacuum. You have to kind of combine the learnings of all of them together in order to make all of them successful.
Good stuff. So you talk about success. How do you measure success? What does that involve?
Yeah, there's a few ways to look at success. The uh, biggest one, if you're making a metadata update, is to see what your keywords look like before and after. You track your keywords and see what those changes look like. But we really look at the native consoles from Apple and Google and what that data tells us about, do I get seen on more search terms? Do I, in aggregate, get more search visibility from doing that by way of impressions on Apple Store listing visits on Google? And then does that convert to more first time new user installs? Um, that's the short of it. You'll have to look at the paid platforms to kind of reconcile what's in the consoles to understand what your organics really look like. And then there's some other things that are mid funnel, I'd say, with re-downloads from in-app event campaigns that you're running. The pre-optimizations that you can do are attributed differently, but the main thing is to attribute success, you need ASO software to understand your keyword rankings because Apple and Google don't give you how you rank for every keyword and things like that. And looking at the actual consoles instead of download estimates, just going to the source of truth, Apple and Google.
Good stuff. Now, to the sort of crux of the matter, we're talking about paid campaigns and supporting organic with paid. How does that work?
So the first thing you have to do is set up your store listing, product page, keywords, all that kind of stuff, so that Apple and Google will know what to index you on. Otherwise, if you launch a paid campaign, it'll do its thing while it's running and it'll stop doing it when you stop giving it money. That's just kind of how it works. But if you tell the algorithm these are the keywords to try me out on, by way of on Apple, it's a lot easier. You can declare your keywords. On Google, it's the content of your description metadata. There's no keyword bank, so it has to kind of crawl it and find it. But if you don't put anything in there for it to do that process, then you won't have as successful of a paid campaign. So the way that paid can support is first you do your ASO by way of keyword updates, lay that foundation, and then do some A/B testing to see what converts best. Because if you convert better, that means you pay less money when you run these campaigns, right? So you can get some of those things out of the way before you start. And then really to take it to the next level, once you have not just I ran a test and I converted 5% better, therefore my CPIs will be 5% lower. But like, what did you do, right? What tested better? How can I bring that into my paid campaign strategy? So, is it the messaging in a short description test I did? How was it different than the control? Can I bring that into the headlines in my Google Play, Google Ads campaigns? Are there keywords I'm getting top visibility on that have volume? And can I run those in an ad group on Apple Ads? Because I should inherently convert better because there's some data showing me I'm getting some love from the algorithm and taps from users, right? So it's the learnings I think a lot of people miss rather than just saying, hey, I did step one and step two, just like David said on the video. But like, why? What happened? And how can you use that information? That's super important too. But the paid campaigns can help support it by way of giving you more tap data. I think for Apple Ads in particular, Google Ads has placements in the Play Store that can help in a similar way. Excuse me, but the Apple search ads placements that show up in search results, the way you rank better organically is votes essentially. Users search a keyword, they look at all the apps, and they tap on the one that appeals to them the most, right? So if enough users tap your app instead of somebody else, that sends a signal to Apple that says rank this higher. And if you maintain that over time, you'll move up. And if your competitors don't, they'll move down. So you can't buy your way to the top just by doing it. You have to get those taps, but that goes for the organic and the paid search listing. So if you get all those taps in the search ad and you take market share away from your competitors for being placed there, takes away their tap opportunities, the keywords that you're targeting and having success with in Apple Ads can help your organic ranking.
Good stuff. Let's just dig a little deeper into that now, then, if we can, about how Apple Ads works and how that supports ASO.
Yeah, so for Apple Ads, I've been talking about the search placements. There's other types of placements you can do while you're searching. You can have some ads appear before then. You can appear at the bottom of a product page on another app in the other apps from this developer or other apps you might like. That's an area too. And then the big one is the Today tab. So people who open their phones and see what's on the Today tab or the apps and games tabs, there's a paid placement you can get there. Those are good too. Better if you have heavy brand recognition or want to get it. But they're not as directional towards your ASO as the search placements are. They're good. All paid traffic sources that convert and give you a reasonable CPI and are not scam traffic that installs and goes away because they got 200 coins for doing whatever it was that they were going to do. Um, if you have healthy traffic from a relevant source, like someone who is looking for your app by way of searching for a similar brand, even your brand, or a feature that your app has, that's going to be a more valuable user than someone who's opening their phone and saying, like, I wonder what's cool on the Today tab today, which is still valuable. All that install volume can help you rank higher in your category if you're getting more than your competitors. It helps you index faster for the keywords that you're targeting. It kind of rises all boats, but more directionally, the search placements and a really well-structured set of campaigns and ad groups is the way to help your organic.
So, what would be then your, I guess, high-level tips for structuring Apple Ads in a way that can best support organic?
Yeah, I see a mixed bag of Apple Ads structures when we're working with new partners that we haven't worked with before. So it could be anything from I made a campaign group and I put a bunch of stuff in it. That's good, right? And I'm like, well, it's better than nothing, kind of. But when like this is in Apple, you take their certification courses. There's like the discovery campaign where you hook it up to search match and broad match and let the algorithm know a few things you're interested in, and it can find some related terms, or just say, hey, uh, tell me what I'm relevant for, and it will go try to find those. So there's a discovery campaign, and you want to isolate any campaigns like that into that group. Um, Competitor ad group, where you have other similar apps to yours, and you can put them in their own ad group. Brand defense, you put in its own ad group. And then there's feature-based keywords And that's when I see too is those four get set up. But depending on your media spend budget and what your app does, it's often a good idea to have more than one feature-based group or even more than one competitor group. So that's kind of the second tier, I'd say, is when those four ad groups are set up so that you can see what at a high level in the web console, um, what's your conversion rates, tap through rates, CPIs, things like that, for not just my Apple ads, but your brand is inherently going to convert better than feature-based keywords, than competitors, things like that. So if you look at your blended CPI and Apple ads and say, oh, it's $5, well, how much is that of that is the $1 CPI you're getting on your brand that's bringing it down, and how successful really is this campaign going? So that's the second structure. But I think building out more ad groups that have different features, like if you have a nutrition app, for example, you could have a dieting ad group, depending on what your app does, an exercise ad group, and then you can even branch out further to like keto diets or vegan diets, whatever it might be. Since Apple allows you to connect custom product pages to ad groups, you wouldn't be able to connect the creatives that would potentially convert better. You want to put like the vegan CPP in the keto ad group or the paleo ad group, right? So that's, I think, the biggest thing is having enough differentiation and contextual keywords in your ad groups. Again, depending on your budget, you can't do it if you don't have enough media spend to support it. Um, but that's really the thing I think a lot of developers could benefit from that I don't see when we start working with people is having unique ad groups so that you can measure how they perform granularly and run some tests on what creatives lower your CPIs, convert better, that sort of thing.
What about cannibalization? Because that's a subject that always sort of comes to the fore when you talk about combining paid and organic. What are your thoughts on that?
It kind of depends where you're at and how much paid you've run in the past. So if you've never run it before, it's pretty easy to see what it looks like after you start it. If you go to App Store Connect and you go to the Apple Ads portal, because App Store Connect just says search, right? So you'll have to go to Apple Ads and measure the search placements there and then reconcile them against what's reported as search in App Store Connect. And then you get your organic and your paid, and you can see for your brand campaign when it got turned on. Um, how much did I lose in organic? And then you can do some calculations that way. But a lot of people already have brand campaigns running and want to understand it. And there's a few ways you could do it. You could turn it off, turn it back on again. You could potentially isolate it to, if your main market is the United States, for example, you could run something in Australia and see what that looks like and use that as a proxy for what might be going on if you don't want to do that in the United States or can't. Um, but really, if you need like a ballpark of it, looking at the share of voice reporting in the custom reports in Apple Ads is super helpful because it'll tell you the bid thing will probably tell you, oh no, bid more, keep bidding more, which may not be the way to do it all the time. But if you look at your share of voice, you can understand if you're getting 90 to 100% share of voice on the keywords related to your brand, the search terms related to your brand. And if you're already tapping out on them, you could try pulling it back a bit. Usually we start to see cannibalization when you're at 90%. So if you notice that you're 90% share of voice or over, then you could probably safely pull it back. And again, you'd have to measure it, just like with anything. You can even get as low as like in between the 80 to 90% range. That's a pretty safe area to still defend your brand because you wouldn't want to just leave it unprotected and have it available on the cheap for your competitors to eat up, right? So 80 to 90 is pretty good. I've seen it be safe as low as 70. That's getting a little bit into leaving it open for competitors to bid on too. But checking your share of voice is super important. And that's not only for cannibalization, but also for what I mentioned about being able to use search placements in Apple Ads to boost your ASO for feature-based keywords. If you're targeting a keyword and you're not ranking well for it, and your bidding on it in Apple ads, that may not be enough. You'll have to check out your share of voice because you may be bidding in a competitive way, may seem competitive, seem pretty high, but you might be getting like 10% share of voice, right? And if you're only getting 10% share of voice, that means one or more apps is getting the rest of it. They're able to get those taps that affect your organic ranking. So, in order to compete and use Apple Ads placements for feature based keywords in the same way to help you rank better organically, you'll need to have top share of voice. You'll need to be getting a competitive tap through rate and conversion rate in order for it to do that.
Good stuff. So, look, to finish us off, David, give us some do's and don'ts in terms of using Apple search ads to support organic.
Yeah, I'd say um, don't start it backwards. Don't run paid campaigns first and then say, oh, I know what I'm doing. Now I will do my keywords because you may have lost a lot of opportunity for the algorithm to index you on what you were targeting at that time when you had that install velocity going up. So I'd say don't start paid campaigns without first establishing your foundational metadata, running some A/B tests and seeing how those do. So do all of that first and then start your paid campaigns. And then don't just stop there or have your teams not communicate with one another about what's going on because you might have some really valuable information from your Apple Ads campaigns, like for this ad group that's about, what did I say, paleo diets. I'm noticing that we are not converting very well. And it even goes beyond the data in the console. You can use an attribution tool to see down funnel how that's doing, which you wouldn't be able to see as well in App Store Connect. So you can tell, you can have your paid teams talk to your organic teams and say, this seems good. We're getting a ton of installs, but nobody is signing up. And then you can talk about why that might be. If the keyword seems to be doing okay, it might be one that you take out in an update you do to replace it with something else. You could look at the keto or the vegan group is doing well. I'm interested in targeting that organically more aggressively and using ASO software to do some research on long tail and support it, that whole thing. Likewise, if you see something doing well organically, you can target it in the paid campaign. So make sure to have the teams talk to each other about what's happening so that each team has some things to test. I'd say that's another one. Don't make one campaign with one ad group with no custom pages hooked up. I guess that seems a little obvious, but I do see that from time to time where there's like one campaign or even search match is turned on in some of these exact match keyword campaigns. So structurally, make sure you're doing all the right things. Adding negative keywords that are relevant from your discovery campaign, or if you're bringing it over to an exact match ad group, making sure you're adding it as negative to the discovery. So just making that optimal too. And having differentiated ad groups, I think, is a really big one that I do see often, even if structurally, I have to talk to Apple and I have discovery, I have better, I have brand, I have feature. I'm good. It's not quite as simple as that. And again, it depends on your bid levels. So I'd say look out for that. And don't be afraid to slowly but confidently move the dial on your share of voice. Make sure you go to the insights, custom reports, get a report on your share of voice, and look at keywords related to your brand to understand your share of voice. Because in the web portal, looking at your bid levels, it may not tell you as much information as you need to know about if I am or am not cannibalizing, or if I am or am not bidding competitively enough to get top placement for a keyword I'm trying to supplement my organic taps with, and if that's happening. So I'd say looking at that report is super critical to understanding if I'm cannibalizing or not. And again, use custom product pages. If you have your structure all set up correctly, got to use those because those are what drives conversion and therefore keeps your costs down that you can put back into running the campaign.
Good stuff. So, just to finally close us off, give us the too long didn't read version of this, if you would, sum it all up in a few key takeaways.
Yeah, do your ASO first, organic ASO, then do the paid component of that ASO with a strategy that is cohesive with it. don't make one ad group and call it a day. Use the learnings you have and set up the structure of it so that you can get the insights you need to optimize towards the terms that are doing well and not the ones that aren't. And have your teams talk to each other about what that is for the data that they can get. Organic side, keyword rankings, impressions, installs for search in aggregate. Paid side, impressions, installs, tap through rates, down funnel if you can, on specific ad groups and keywords within them. Collaborating is super important there. Use custom product pages. Check out if you're cannibalizing, and make it iterative. See what worked, what didn't. Constantly change it. It's seasonal, so make sure that you're constantly making updates related to that and running tests around it. Yeah, set up the foundation, run tests, structure it properly. All those things are super critical to success.
Brilliant. David, you've covered an incredible amount of ground in an incredible amount of detail in just under 20 minutes. So thank you very much indeed for that.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, David.
Good stuff. So that's a wrap for this chat with David Quinn from Gummicube. Ladies and gents, we'll see you next time. Hope you've enjoyed it.
And that was the episode 253, How Paid Campaigns Boost Your ASO, featuring the App Talks interview with David Quinn, VP of Strategy and Partnerships at Gummicube. To listen to more episodes, by now we have more than 250 to check out. Subscribe to our podcasts on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. Remember, we release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe and you will be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.